the minister, the deputy ministers, the DG, the, the head of SARS, and yourselves, chairpersons. Firstly, our point of departure is that we really need a paradigm shift. And part of the paradigm shift must involve looking at last year's budget speech and looking at last year's promises in the budget review and assessing as Parliament whether those were achieved or whether those were just words that were spoken to just get the process through and get us to just rubber stamp a process. I think that is very important, Chair, going forward, that we should really start the year by not getting a forward-looking budget speech, but by getting an input from the Treasury about what is it that was said last year and how have we achieved, and what are the key performance indicators on the matters that were said. For example, slide 22 of the DG's presentation this morning talks about the budget reaffirms government's commitment to increasing living standards. So what are the key KPIs of increased living standards? And how will we be able to measure that these were not just words that were spoken in the last slide of the DG's presentation at this meeting on this Friday, but that these were words that had gravitas, that had that were spoken with conviction, and that they were followed by deeds. Because I think that is part of the problem with what we do in South Africa, is that we have wonderful plans, but our execution sadly lags. My second set of questions relates to the debt. Now that the budget is not approved and that we are on day 1 month and 23 days without the budget in the new fiscal year, how is that going to affect the borrowing program for the year? Because the borrowing, as far as I remember, is done by bond auctions that are conducted every week. Has Treasury been conducting bond auctions in the last 1.5 months? And under what authority? Because I think the authority in the legislation is the authority to spend up to 45% of last year's budget, to spend and not to borrow. It doesn't talk about borrowing. So I'm just wondering if there has been any bond auctions that have been conducted, and under what authority were they conducted, legislative authority? And if not, how has the inability to borrow in the last 1 month and 23 days, and in fact, it's going to be, because this process will go on until the 31st of July, according to the latest, so until July. So that is like for a quarter of the year of no borrowing, if the borrowing is not being done. But if it is being done, under what authority is it being done? Thirdly, I want to add on to the question of Honorable Khanyane, what strategies do we have as the National Treasury to reduce debt service costs? Strategies. So what are we doing to the bond portfolio? What are we doing to the yield curve? How are we managing the yield curve? How are we managing maturities to make sure that we can reduce debt service costs? Ironically, we don't necessarily see our debt levels as being very high at 72% and growing to 77%. The average in the world is close to 100%, both in emerging markets and in developed markets. So at 72%, I think we still have some headroom for increasing debt, but our debt is the problem. Our debt service costs are the high, which talk to the efficiency of the management of our debt, as well as the costs related to it. Countries with debt liabilities. Thirdly, I see that the IPPs contributed, IPPs liabilities were reduced contingent liabilities were reduced from 213 billion rand last year to now 190 billion projected for this 2025. What accounts for that? Because I believe that the IPP program is going ahead, and as the IPP program is going ahead, we continue to issue government guarantees to solar and wind farmers. So I just want detail on how that reduction happened. And also the RAF contingent liability is increasing from 368 billion to 384 billion, which is more than a third of a trillion rand in RAF contingent liabilities. And these contingent liabilities are the things that can actually collapse the state later on if they materialize. So we are interested to know what accounts for that increase in the RAF contingent liabilities. And in the light of what the honorable member earlier said about the fuel tax and the RAF, how does that play out? Chair, growth is now projected to be 1.4%, which is half a percentage point, a whole half a percentage point less than what was projected a month ago. Now, a month ago, most of the people who came to the public hearing said that the Treasury growth projections are unrealistic. And the Treasury disagreed. So was it just a paper disagreement or a disagreement that was indeed not based on fact and thorough, dispassionate modeling of the economy? Or was it just a disagreement because the number had been put down, it came from wherever it came from and it had to be defended? Because that is not how we should approach budgeting. As you know.
Can you conclude, Honorable Molefe?
Yes. Chair, the other statement that was made was renewable energy could drive economic growth. I don't know how that will happen with renewable energy projects in wind and solar having an energy availability factor of 30%. As soon as the sun goes down, solar is not available. So how is that going to contribute to economic growth? And lastly, Chair, what happened to the nuclear procurement program? Is it budgeted for? Are we proceeding? Because I think that the Minister of Energy had announced the RFP or a request for information, one of the two. So Chair, I'll stop there for now and then I'll.
Thank you, Honorable Molefe.